Well, good morning. It's Tuesday morning, and today we're going to look at the ascension story in Luke. So this is right after he's told them all about everything that had to happen and going through all the scriptures and everything, and told them to stay in the city until they are clothed with power from on high. And then verse 50, and he led them out as far as Bethany, and lifting up his hands, he blessed them. While he blessed them, he parted from them and was carried up into heaven. And they worshipped him and returned to Jerusalem with great joy and were continually in the temple blessing God. So that's the version, that's the very end of the Gospel of Luke. That's where it ends. In Matthew, in the Acts of the Apostles, it will pick up with the same story, a little more detail, and then he will fly away. And I was a little confused yesterday. Yeah, Ascension Day is 10 days before Pentecost, so 40 days after Easter. So it's on a Thursday, and it moves according to when Easter and Pentecost move. So this year it is May the 18th, Thursday, May 18th, and Pentecost is Sunday, May 28th. So it's the Thursday. It's 2 Thursdays before Pentecost is Ascension Day, and it's not a day that we celebrate, though, as I said yesterday, John Calvin thought that it was an important day in the life of the church, and it one of the major feasts, and we don't keep it as a major feast, and so there you go. But that's how the church celebrates it. Now, was it exactly 40 days after Easter? We don't know. 40 days in the scripture typically means a long time. 40 of anything means a lot or a long time. So 40 days, it was a long time, and then he went up. There is no indication that that's actually how it happened. Matthew has him doing it the next day or the same day as Easter. He rose from the dead. He saw his disciples, and then he took them outside the city and ascended. Mark doesn't have anything at all about the ascension. And in John, it's not sure it's even there either. Because John sort of trails off saying, well, there's a lot of stuff he did we don't have time to write about, but, believe. So we get Matthew and we get Luke, and they differ on the timing. Now, Pentecost we can nail down, because Pentecost was, the word means 50 somethings, 50 days. So it's 50 days after Passover was Pentecost, the Feast of Pentecost. It was a Jewish festival, another Jewish kind of festival. And so whatever it was that they celebrated on Pentecost, and the Jews, that I forget, but they that's when the Spirit came to the apostles and basically started the church as we know it. And so it's a day that has significance in both traditions. And for us, Pentecost then is always 50 days after Easter, and Easter is linked to the date of Passover. It's the first Sunday after the first full moon after the Passover, which can vary from late March until almost sometime in early May. So a pretty wide range of variations. And it depends on how you interpret that first full moon after that, first full moon after the day of Passover, because of the way the Jews count their days, and when the full moon appears, you can have as much as a week's variation on the date of Easter. For example, this year we celebrated Easter on April the 9th. The Orthodox churches celebrated Easter on April 16th, last Sunday or Sunday week. And that's just the way it is most years. Some years were the same date, some years were different dates, and it all has to do with how you interpret that rule from the 4th century, which wasn't terribly precise. Well, okay, we didn't need to do all of that today, but you see that, you know, Easter and Pentecost are pretty fixed. They move around, but they're sort of fixed in relation to each other. They're 50 days apart. So 7 weeks after Easter, we have Pentecost. And in that time, 10 days before Pentecost, the church has said that's when we'll celebrate the Ascension. So it's celebrated, as I said, on May the 18th this year. How do we celebrate the Ascension? Well, just remember that Jesus rose bodily into heaven. And so however that could speak to you, let it speak. Calvin thought it was important because it meant that his body wasn't being consumed at the Mass. I don't think that's really an issue for us anymore. I don't think that any of us are going to march in the streets or die because of an incorrect interpretation of the Eucharist. But that was the 15th century, and that's not our century. So you take the Ascension for what it is. Jesus rose into heaven and is still there, seated at the right hand of the Father, and let that speak to your life in whatever ways it will. And we will see you tomorrow, where we will read the beginning of Acts and see what Luke does with the same story the second time around. Have a great day.